بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجه الكريم إن شاء الله تعالى. Where did we leave off at?
Page 54.
And what's the line we started?
He then said, is it allowed for the living to follow the dead and follow his fatwa without referring back to the evidence verifying the validity of following it?
Okay, Bismillah. And this is Ibn al-Qayyim. Okay, let's read. We on page 54, you said?
Correct.
Okay, Bismillah. Let's begin with Al-Fatiha to the soul of Sayyid Sheikh Muhammad Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti al-Fatiha. نعم بسم الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, he then said, is it allowed for the living to follow the dead and follow his fatwa without referring back to the evidence verifying the validity of following it? There are two opinions on that from the followers of Imam Ahmed.
Remember, this is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, who was from the Hanbali school. Now,
there are two opinions on that from the followers of Imam Ahmed. Those who prohibited it argued that if the Imam was still alive, he would have changed his ijtihad and would have reconsidered his position in light of new circumstances. The other opinion is that it is allowed, and many followers in all parts of the world do that, and the best thing that they have in their hands is through following the dead. Words do not die with the death of their speaker, nor does information die with the death of its narrator. He also said, the 48th benefit. If a man possesses one or both Sahih collections or a reliable book on the Sunnah of the Prophet,
Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim,
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, can he give a fatwa based on what he finds in them? The correct answer is that there is some detail to this. If the meaning of the hadith is clear and explicit to anyone who hears it and allows no other interpretation, then he can go ahead and follow it and give a fatwa in it without waiting for approval from a faqih or an imam, because the evidence lies in the words of the Messenger of Allah Ta'ala, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
And here a point is that one knows that this can bear no other meaning. So one has to have an understanding of the meaning of words and the meaning of that can be taken from words in the Arabic language.
If, however, the meaning of the hadith is not clear, he is not allowed to follow or give a fatwa based upon an imaginary interpretation, unless he consults to verify the interpretation of the hadith. Then he said, this is all contingent on the fact that he is qualified, yet has a shortcoming in the knowledge of the branches and the principles of the scholars of usul, fundamentals, as well as Arabic. If there is no qualification at all, then he is to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered. Ask the people of the reminder if you know not. Holy Quran, Surah 16, Ayah 43.
So as you can see, this verse in Surah 16 verse 43 and also Surah 21 verse number 7 فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلِ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. is a principal verse for understanding the difference between a scholar and a common person. And I'm telling you, I beg you, for purposes of al-fiqh, always when we talk about scholars, talk about al-mujtahidun at their various levels and common people, muqallidun. Even if that muqallid is learned and in his time, the most learned. If the person didn't reach the level of ijtihad, then when we're talking about in this terms of scholarship, we should be more strict, right? Same is the case in hadith. When we're talking about hadith, we're talking about al-hufadh, the master memorizers of hadith. We're not talking about people who did not reach that rank, right? And at minimum, that rank, if you want to get an idea, the scholars mention that person must have memorized 100,000 hadith with their chains of narration. We're talking about people of that rank. What is less than that rank, they're not in the discussion when we're talking about real hadith scholarship. So same likewise, when we're talking about these issues, we're talking about the mujtahid. Is this clear? It's very important because the titles are thrown around too loosely today. We're dying to call somebody a scholar, even if they're not qualified. I don't know why we have this sickness, but it is a big one that we got to make somebody a scholar. No, that person should be qualified and then they will become a scholar, no problem. But we're not going to lower the bar just to say we have scholars. So let's keep context. If we want to say someone's learned, just say that. He's learned. He has knowledge, right? We don't have to make them Imam Abu Hanifa or Imam Malik or Imam Shafi or Imam Ahmed. This is extremely important because when you have this concept and this problem, you're going to mix up a lot of things. That's how we get this concept of they are men and we are men. It's not the same. We're not the same level, right? The giant is not like the dwarf. They're not equal in their size. Nah.
In answering the question, can a mufti give a fatwa based on a school madhab other than that of his imam? He
Now
said,
here, remember, in this time when they're talking, the mufti was at the level of ijtihad. Remember this. The context in which he's talking, the mufti was at the level of ijtihad. Not like today, where the mufti may not even know his far'ain. It's not the same. The mufti that he's referring to is the one who is at the level of ijtihad, and he can give fatwa on the issues that he reached ijtihad. So he's at a level of scholarly deduction. He's at a level, right? So that's what we mean, the mufti. So the mufti is talking about, not the mufti that we see today. Two different things. Please keep context. Okay, go ahead.
it was quoted from Abu Amr ibn as-Salah that he said, he who finds a hadith that is inconsistent with his school, if qualification for ijtihad is absolute in that particular matter, then he should, as a priority, follow the hadith.
Here
If,
you go.
however,
This is considering, he's saying, if the tools of ijtihad are complete in him, absolutely, or he has the tools of ijtihad within the school, right? Or In one case, then he can follow the hadith based on his own ijtihad. Read that back. It's very important. All those exceptions that he made before someone is qualified to give the judgment. Mm.
He who finds a hadith that is inconsistent with his school, if qualification for ijtihad is absolute in that particular matter, then he should, as a priority,
No,
follow
no,
the
that
hadith.
doesn't read right. Say it again.
If he who finds a hadith that is inconsistent with his school,
All right, that's one point. So the
if
person
quali-
finds a madhab that seems to contradict his school. Go ahead.
if qualification for ijtihad is absolute in that particular matter,
All right, that's read wrong. If the qualification of ijtihad are complete in him, whether it's absolute or in the madhab of his imam. So we're talking about the person who sees the hadith. If the qualifications of ijtihad are found in him, whether he's an absolute mujtahid or he's a mujtahid within the school of his imam, right? So that's that point. Is that clear? I don't know how we can reword that to make it say that.
if qualification for ijtihad is complete
In him,
in him, either absolute in that particular matter or in the madhab of his imam, as a priority, then he should, as a priority, follow the hadith.
man,
Is that better?
that- okay, let me just read it back what it should be saying, right? If the if a person finds a hadith that seems to contradict his madhab, right? And he has the qualifications of ijtihad, whether an absolute ijtihad or ijtihad within the school of his imam, or he has it in some particular legal rulings. So these are different types of ijtihad he's mentioning, right? If that is found in him, then he should act according to that hadith. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. If qualification for ijtihad, if he has qualification for ijtihad, whether it is absolute or in the madhab of his imam or in that particular matter,
Right.
then he should, as a priority, follow the hadith. If, however, his qualification for ijtihad is not absolute, yet he has some easy feelings about contradicting the hadith after having researched and not found a sufficient response to justify opposing it, he should investigate whether an independent imam acted upon it or not. If he finds that one did, then he may follow his school in acting upon that hadith, and this would be an excuse for him to leave the school of his imam.
So you're noticing that he's mentioning Ibn al-Qayyim in his book is mentioning that following the hadith is not just free for anyone. I saw a hadith, it contradicts the madhab, let me act upon. La, 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 he got conditions, right? And all of those conditions he mentioned has relation to the person's qualified to do ijtihad, right? At some level. Now, the question you would always ask when someone wants to go against the madhab, what are your qualifications of ijtihad, right? That becomes important to understand.
Right after that, he said, the 50th benefit. Can a mufti who belongs to a school, madhab, of an imam give a fatwa, legal opinion, based upon another school if the evidence becomes preponderant to him?
Mm-hmm.
If he follows the school of that imam in ijtihad, and in researching the evidence, he can give a fatwa based on what is preponderant to him from the view of that other imam. If he is a mujtahid bound by the positions of his imam, it was said that he may not give a fatwa based on other than that of his imam, and if he is to do so, he should state that it is said by so and so. What is correct in this issue is that if evidence becomes preponderant to him that is not based upon the position of his of his Imam, he should discard the methods of his Imam in that regard. The Imams are in agreement on that. Whenever someone encounters something preponderant, then his method becomes invalid, and the preponderant evidence is then to be followed. Is to be followed. Excuse me. If it becomes clear to this mujtahid who is bound by the methods of his Imam that the evidence is preponderant and correct, then he can give a fatwa based on that evidence at the expense of his Imam's position. And all success is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So that's the Imam Muqayyid. That's the Imam who is restricted within the methodology of the Imam of the school. Now, but in any case, that person is, you have al-mujtahid mutlaq, that's the absolute mujtahid, al-mujtahid al-muqayyad is that mujtahid that is restricted within the school of the Imam. But if you notice, all of them are what? Mujtahid. Everyone
These
here already got mujtahid and muqallid, ijtihad and taqlid, right? Everyone is aware of these terms now, right? Is there anyone who doesn't know what those terms mean? Tell you. Okay, go ahead.
These were excerpts quoted from his discussion about fatwa, its prerequisites and manners. Are these words which declare taqlid following to be unlawful or make it mandatory for people to go directly to the Holy Quran and the Sunnah? Does it make it unlawful to follow a specific school of law, or does he ask from the follower to keep changing from one mujtahid to another? Do you not see that each of these excerpts is a clear statement beyond doubt that an ignorant person may only be a follower, and that a person who follows a specific school may not give a fatwa in a matter based on any other school unless he is a mujtahid in it, and that following someone who is deceased is the same as the following of a living person whose words do not die with the death of their speakers, as he put it, and that relying on books of hadith alone does not make a muqallid a mujtahid.
Right. So here, Sister Khabira, I'll come back to it, inshallah, at the end of the class. Let me, so in general, let me put it up real quick. I'm sorry, because there's more than one person asking. So a taqleed is following qualified legal scholarship, right? So that means following a qualified legal scholar, jurist. Ijtihad is the ability to deduce legal rulings independently of following qualified scholarship, meaning you are a qualified scholar yourself and you can deduce legal rulings. That's called ijtihad. The one who's practices a taqlid is called al-muqallid, right? And the one who practices ijtihad is called a mujtahid. So whenever we say in fiqh, when we're talking about this subject like this, we say a scholar, we mean al-mujtahid, right? And if you're not a mujtahid, you're a muqallid. And the muqallid must follow a mujtahid. And the way the muqallid follows the mujtahid is to follow his school of thought. Okay, go ahead.
If Ibn al-Qayyim was of the same position as that of the author of the booklet, that following the Imams is tantamount to following those who are not divinely protected from error, while following the Prophet ﷺ is tantamount to following the infallible, then why is it that he made following the four schools the topic of his discussion and the basis for his definitions? Why is it that he made it imprudent for a muqallid to rely on books of hadith and prohibited him from giving fatwa, and prohibited the seeker of fatwa to depend on him?
Read that again, that didn't sound right.
Why is it that he made it imprudent for a muqallid to rely on books of hadith and prohibited him from giving fatwa, and prohibited the seeker of fatwa to depend on him?
Mhm.
Why is it that he warned the muqallid not to give a fatwa based on a position other than that of his imam, unless he was a mujtahid in that particular matter? Why is it that he reassured the muqallid that his following of someone who is deceased was valid and not prohibited?
And which gives you the understanding that the scholars, and here Ibn al-Qayyim is an important figure because most of the people who don't follow madhabs claim to follow in his way because he was the main student of Ibn Taymiyyah. But he was Hanbali, and even though he had deviations in Aqidah, in al-fiqh, he didn't accept for less than a mujtahid to do the work of ijtihad or deducing legal rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah directly. Mm.
I have spent a considerable amount of time quoting from Ibn al-Qayyim because of the bigotry I know that some of the advocates of Allah Madhhabiyya have for his opinions. They are so particular about him that they display more abominable bigotry than that which they accuse the majority of Muslims of regarding following their imams. I have done this hoping that if they were to consider closely his writings, they may find it easier to return to the path of truth. As for the quote which the author of the booklet has chosen from what Ibn al-Qayyim said in this regard, in order to back his claim about the unlawfulness of adhering to a specific school of law, it is quite far from having anything to do with backing such a claim. Here is the text of Ibn al-Qayyim which the author of the booklet has chosen from his discussion. A layman has no school, madhab, even if he
All right,
were.
here, this is an important rule. Al-Ami, which is the layman, they said that laysa lahu madhab. He has no school, right? What is understood to that is that the common person follows the school of whatever mujtahid gives him the legal judgment, right? Go ahead.
A layman has no school, madhab, even if he were to follow one. A layman does not have a school so as to say, I am Shafi'i, Hanafi, Hanbali, or Maliki, because saying so does not make it true.
Right? Now, what is understood from this? So, for instance, what the scholars understood from this is that the common person doesn't have a madhab because the common person does not know the you normally the cases of that imam in the various aspects of the sacred law, nor know from how he arrived at those decisions, even if even if uh even if Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, even if he knows the ruling, he doesn't know how he derived it. So in this case, he's just following without actually knowing from where the imam derived those rulings. So in such case, they don't consider him as really a follower of the madhab, right? The one who's considered a follower is that he knows the positions of the imam in the cases of the sacred law, and he knows from where he derived them, even if he cannot do it himself. That's considered a follower of a madhab, which we don't fit. We are common people. Mm. So even though we say we're Shafi'i, we're Maliki, we're Hanbali, we saying that meaning in some rulings we follow the imam. As for in reality, none of us really follow a madhab because we don't know enough about a madhab in particular to follow it in all the cases. Mm. And I
What
think this is part of us not realizing how vast a madhab is, right? You know, Madhabs are vast, a lot of information, and it takes a long time to actually, if you want to say, be enrolled in a madhab. You know, and stop doing this. Us, we have this tendency to always say there's a difference of opinion without knowing it. That doesn't work, right? Oh, there's a difference of opinion among the scholars. What's that difference of opinion? I don't know. It's just a difference of opinion of the scholars. It doesn't work, right? In the true sense of the word, Sister Khadijah, we're not mukallid. We have to be mukallid in some issues, but we're not mukallid for a particular madhab necessarily. We may be mukallid in general that we have to follow a mujtahid, whether it's from the Hanafi school or the Maliki school or the Shafi'i school or the That's our case. We have to act. So maybe we may at one time act according to the Shafi'i school. At another time, we may act according to the Hanafi school or the Maliki school or the other Hanbali school, depending on the case. Wherever the information is available and there is a teacher to show us that path, then we follow it, so long as it's from the qualified imams. No, 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 no. Listen, forget us. I hate to say this like this. Please, please listen. Forget us for right now. Let's get out of ourselves. We're we're building something better for our children, and hopefully we benefit, right? We have to stop the idea that we're scholars. We're not. That's delusion, right? I know we like the sound. It rings good, but it's not real. And if we're ever going to see scholars among us, we're going to have to travel the path of scholarship, right? And in order to travel the path of scholarship, we got to know what scholarship is. You follow me? I know that sometimes it seems like hard, but it's not. If we're really trying to do it right, and we're going to compete on the global stage, and I don't mean as a competition, I mean if we're going to have any consideration, we have to get our deen together, right? This is common around the world, even though scholarship in general has corroded. But around the world, people are still having some kind of understanding of what scholarship is, even if they don't meet the requirements. We've got it to, we've just annihilated the concept of scholarship, right? And this is not good for us, nor our children, right? So that's the point. So don't take it as a way to be, uh, feel like someone is saying you don't know anything. No, that's not what is being said. What is being said is we're not at the level we may imagine ourselves to be. And there are many things that we are missing that we need to get together. You accept it in your regular life, right? When you need something done that requires a professional, even if you have some knowledge in it, if depending how serious it is, you're not going to do it. You're going to get a professional. You're not going to claim, uh, that you're an electrician and you don't know about being an electrician. You're not an electrician. Though can change a light bulb, that doesn't make you an electrician. Do y'all understand what I mean? Is this clear? Because I don't want you to be feel like, uh, nor should you feel like, uh, we don't know anything. You know some stuff, and there's more you need to learn. And some things we have mixed up. We got to fix them. That's all the point is. That's what learning. All schools are valid. What does it mean? It means that all of the four schools are valid to follow, right? That's what it means. You can follow any of the four schools, right? In any case, so long as you don't mix them in the same case. That's another detail, right? So no school is better than the other. It's valid. Just make sure when you do your acts of worship, it is valid according to a school, right? In that case, example, if you pray, make sure the prayer is valid according to one of the four schools, right? If you fast, make sure your fasting is valid according to one of the four schools. When you pay a zakat, make sure your zakat is valid according to one of the four schools. If you marry, then make sure you marry according to one of the four schools validly, not simultaneously in the same issue. So you can't follow two schools in one issue, one legal case, right? You have to follow one school. No problem. Whatever we can do to help. What page are we on?
Page 57.
Why I have to reiterate this? Because you're gonna hear this, right, from me. And then some of us are going to tune in to uh, Sheikh, I think I'm a scholar, and he's going to tell you you don't have to follow a madhab. And now you're going to be stuck between, well, who I like and not what is the issue. So therefore, if I keep explaining to you, then when Sheikh, I think I know, starts talking, you say, are you a mujtahid? And then you'll have to weigh, okay, oh, he's not a mujtahid. Okay, we're not paying that no attention, right? Right? Because we're talking about following mujtahidun. And then you have a common person telling you we don't need to follow mujtahidun. Mm. Let's stick with just following a madhab. Let's not make it so complicated. Whenever you follow you have a case, an obligation, make sure it's valid according to one of the four schools. Stop there, right? That's it. That's it. Don't complicate it. Stop complicating things. I follow one school in this issue. If I have another issue, I don't have no one to teach me. I'm going to follow one school according to that issue and find someone to make sure I understand it correctly. That's it. Stop. Full stop. If I want to go to more details, let me learn. Right? Don't complicate your deen. This is easy. Actually, the opposite way is much more difficult. It relieves you of trying to figure out the religion on your own when you know you don't know it. We are common people. Let's not complicate our lives. Mm. Go ahead.
What Ibn al-Qayyim said before and after it is an explanation of what is undisputed, namely that it is not mandatory for a muqallid to follow one particular school in all matters. We have said that this is agreeable and have set
So
it
in all
aside.
matters is a general. In all of the different aspects of the sacred law, And in every individual case, you don't have to follow just one school. As I just told you, if it's better if you have a one school and you know many cases or many aspects of the sacred law and you can do it all in one school, that is the ideal thing. But that may not be possible. So you can say, like you hear some people say, they don't, I'm Hanafi or I'm Shafi'i, but they don't know how to marry in the Shafi'i school. How are you Shafi'i? Then you need to follow the Hanbali school if someone's there to teach you to marry properly. Do you follow my point? It'll be a class going taught in Shafi'i fiqh, and the person say, I'm Hanafi, and they don't know the rules of the religion. You're not Hanafi. You're a common person. You need to learn the rules of the religion, even if it's according to the Shafi'i school, or likewise, or even if it was according to the Maliki school. You have to learn the rules of the religion. Is this point clear? So we go back to the base. The common person doesn't have a madhab. His madhab is the one who teaches him how to follow the religion correctly. So long as that teacher is following the proper methodology of a mujtahid scholar. All right, let me reword this. Our obligation is to follow the religion correctly, right? In order to follow the religion correctly, we have to understand the sources of the religion, right? In order to do that, you have to have some qualifications. The one who has that qualification, those qualifications, is called a mujtahid, right? So therefore, in order for us to follow that, the one who doesn't have those qualifications must ask and follow the one who has those qualifications. That mujtahid has his deductions in the form of a school. So the common person follows that school, which is the way they follow the Quran and the Sunnah. Is that clear? Is it clear? We're there? So sometimes, remember, this book is a response to another author who was opposed to following madhabs, right? And he had it in his mind that every common person, he didn't distinguish between the mujtahid and the muqallid. Everyone has the ability to go to the Quran and Sunnah, which we know is not real. But even among them, they don't feel that way. What it ends up being is you're making taqleed of them, not the four imams or the school of the madhahib. But it's still taqleed, right? It's just an invalid taqleed of a person who's not qualified, but it's still taqleed. Now, go ahead.
We have said that this is agreeable and have set it aside from the sphere of discussion. But this paragraph, which we cite, gives the illusion, if taken separately, that the claim made by the author of the booklet is credible in regards to condemning taqlid and asking people to rely directly on the Holy Quran and the Sunnah.
Good.
However, the intended meaning in this quote is far from that. The intended meaning is what many scholars have said all along, namely, that if a layman finds a mufti for the matter he is seeking fatwa in, and he asks him about it, then the layman is bound to follow what the mufti tells him. A layman may not ask the mufti to give him a fatwa based on a specific school because a mufti is a mujtahid. Otherwise, he would not have been called that, nor would he have been appointed to such a position.
Hear that? The mufti, in this context, is a mujtahid, right? So that's an important thing. So the common person can't say to that mufti, right? Nah, I'm this school. You don't know the ruling. You follow the ruling of the qualified scholar, whatever school he is, because the object is what? To follow qualified scholarship. Comparative fiqh is very dangerous because it is what Farouk talked about, cherry picking. This madhab says this, and this madhab says this, and this madhab says this, and then you pick what you want. It doesn't work that way. That's one of the most dangerous practices that has become common today. Comparative fiqh. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Why? Because every legal ruling has three things, basically. It has its preconditions, its integrals, and its invalidators. And when you do comparative fiqh, normally you don't know all of them. You just know the ruling. And you don't know the details to those rulings within that particular school. That's why it's dangerous. So the person just says, the Hanafis say this, the Malikis say this, the Shafi'is say this, the Hanbalis say this, and pick whatever you like. Well, the Malikis got rules to that, conditions, integrals, and invalidators. So do the Shafi'is, so do the Hanafis, and so do the Hanbalis. Did they tell you which one is which? No. So that's why it's dangerous. No, it's better to follow a qualified teacher. And if that teacher is in any madhab, you follow them until you have a teacher who can teach you all of a madhab. If you don't have a teacher like that, and whenever a new case comes up, you don't have someone to ask, then you ask those in any of those schools who are qualified. It's not complicated. And there is no fanaticism involved, right? And then if within your school there is a hardship, then you may ask outside of the school. And you can usually ask the teacher that. How did that happen? Are you pressing buttons? Is that clear? You don't. Let me answer some of these questions quickly. Finish this point, and then I'll answer those questions. Go ahead.
A mujtahid answers the question posed by a seeker based upon the conclusions of his ijtihad. He does not have to follow the position taken by another mujtahid like him in order to give that layman a fatwa based on the layman's school. A layman may inquire about what a Shafi'i said regarding that particular matter, and the mujtahid may tell him what he said in this regard as a way of reporting, not as a fatwa. But for the layman to stipulate that a mufti give him a fatwa based on the school of his imam is untenable because he will be
meaning the mujtahid.
because he will be considered an ignorant person who claims knowledge of a certain school of law. If this is truly the case, then he need not seek a fatwa from his mujtahid.
Did y'all get that point? And we do that all the time, right? The person doesn't know, go to the teacher and tell him like he know. You don't know. If you knew, why are you asking me? Right? That means you don't know. So follow the rules. That's funny. Go ahead.
To express this intended meaning without allowing any doubt, scholars have said, the school of a layman is that of his mufti. A layman, accordingly, has no particular school.
Okay, let's stop there. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Let me see where we at. Let's finish this section for Ibn Qayyim. There's only one more page. Go ahead.
But what happens if a layman turns around and finds no mufti, meaning here an absolute mujtahid, or muqallid scholars who follow particular schools of law, who are only called muftis rhetorically or metaphorically? Footnote 31. This is known by any beginning student who has studied the difference between these words, mufti and scholar. The rule that a layman is of the school of his mufti does not apply at all in this case, simply because he has no mufti. However, he may seek a fatwa from a mujtahid who has passed away. You recall that many scholars, and on top of their list, Ibn Qayyim, said that words do not die with the death of their speakers. Hence, the living are allowed to follow the dead. Some of the best independent jurists of the past he could ever have he could ever seek a fatwa from are the four imams who have earned the consensus of scholars of this faith because of the service, the scrutiny, and the honesty of referencing their schools amassed. It is also because of the reassurance in these schools and the soundness of their claim back to the original founders. Such
Their
advance
chain, not their claim, their chain.
I'm sorry, the chain.
Did it say chain or claim?
It says chain.
Okay, good.
Such advantages have never been available in any other schools. That is why we may ask any one of them through asking scholars and jurists versed in them, or he may study their works if he is able to do so. He may follow one of them in all matters and rulings if he so chooses, and he may switch from one to another within the constraints scholars have mentioned, parts
Within
of
the
which
constraints, meaning the conditions. So the question about cherry picking, that's the problem. Do you know the conditions of those legal rulings? If not, you can't sure that you're applying them properly. There are conditions, there are integrals, there are invalidators. So you need to learn all of that before you follow. It's not just follow. Mm.
parts of which we have gone over. By doing that, a layman has not broken the rule of him being of the school of his mufti. If he cannot find a mufti and he has to seek a fatwa from Imam Ash-Shafi'i, for example, he becomes Shafi'i himself by virtue of the same rule. This is the meaning intended by Ibn al-Qayyim, and you find it clearly detailed in many books dealing with methods of ijtihad. Go through any of them and you will find that in detail.
Yes. Wasallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. All right. Go ahead. If it's anything is not clear, go ahead and ask your questions, inshallah. I think this should be very simple, right? By now, it should be getting easy. Where are we at? Mm. By the way, let me change the banner. We will be in Philadelphia, all of the imams from the Black Imams Roundtable with the Hanifiya Haven Inc. Today from 11 to 6 at 1201 South 23rd Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. That's in South Philly. Insha'Allah ta'ala. I'll leave it up. Go ahead. Are we clear on everything? So the question for Sister Najia is, what I understand from cherry picking is just picking whatever you like. And this is a problem without knowing the rules related to everything you're picking. So let me give you this. In every madhab, for every ruling, you have shurut. They're called conditions. You have arkan. And you have right? All right. So in every case, in prayer, in fasting, in marriage, divorce, buying, selling, you have conditions for the application of a legal ruling, meaning those things that must be fulfilled before the ruling the action or the deed can begin in a valid manner. You have integrals, those things that are a part of the action that must be maintained for the action to remain valid. Then you have mubtilat, invalidators, things that you do that the act will become invalid. When you follow a madhab, in any case, you have to know those things, right? You can't just know the final result. You have to know actually what is needed to maintain it as a valid act of worship, right? So therefore, in this case, there's no cherry picking, because the one who cherry picks is not doing that. And if the one is doing that, then they're following the madhab and it's not cherry picking. Yes, Khadija, you're right. So the scholars that we read today, they are muqallid, and they're just issuing, relating from the books or the sayings of the mujtahidun. But they're learned people. So for instance, my teachers, they're not mujtahidun. They're muqallid. But they are learned people at the high levels of following scholarship. But they're not mujtahids. So what are they doing? They're only relating what the mujtahidun said, what the mujtahid scholar said. That's their job. So if you can look at it, they are common people at the highest levels of learned common people, and they serve as a bridge from the mujtahid scholars to the basic common people. So some of us are in between, right? So the scholars that usually we have today that we call scholars are high-ranking muqallids. Does that make sense? The scholars we call scholars today are high-ranking muqallids. Most of them. Very few mujtahids. Maybe mujtahid in masail in some cases, but as for the sharia, the whole sharia, no. That doesn't put anyone down. I mean, do y'all understand that? That doesn't put people down. But it doesn't lift them above their status either. When you're dealing with, listen, let's look at it this way. Be honest. When any of us have serious sickness, right? A sickness, right? Do we want someone acting like they're a specialist operating on us? We have a serious illness, whatever it may be, and we have to have an operation. Does any one of us want someone acting like a specialist operating on us? You don't have to ask that. It's known. It's not, you don't have to ask someone what's your level. I know you're not no mujtahid. No one's making such a claim, right? So basically, you have to learn to trust somebody. The way you learn to trust somebody is studying with them, being with them, right? And you know from where they take, where they learn. And then at the same time, you're learning. Do you follow my point? You know, that's something that's, you got to be around someone to know that that person, for instance, you may be around a person, he's Shafi'i, for instance. Let's just use the school that I mostly follow, right? If you're around him, you're going to see that he makes mistakes in Shafi'i fiqh, right? That doesn't mean he's a bad person. He doesn't know everything. He's going to make some errors. So you'll know this one is very reliable. He memorizes his books. He's very accurate. If he's guessing, he'll stop. He'll go check. Usually he's trustworthy, right? You'll get to know that about people, right? That takes time. So, I mean, it's not about, it's not going to be microwave Islam. You have to slow cook this thing. Everything got to go in the slow cooker these days. Don't look for microwave Islam. It's not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's going to be horrible food when it's finished. We got to take it slow. Right. You're mixing it. Right. Farouk, this is wrong. Mm. No, this is the major problem. Listen, for us, this is a major problem. We follow qualified scholars, and we're all equal in that. Some of us know a little bit more than the other, but we're all common people, right? So, with that being said, none of us are to be followed. We can be good transmitters at best, right? Good conveyors of what we received. That's the best that we may be at our levels. As for follow me, we're not qualified to be followed. We're not. Sorry. I know it doesn't work for your bottom line, but you're not a scholar to be followed. You the ones who to be followed are scholars. Now, what you can do is what? You can convey the works of the scholars and we can all follow them together. As for you becoming the reference, no. Sorry. Unless you actually reach the level that you should be followed. And there are conditions for that. We should learn the conditions and see if you meet them. And you don't. So you don't need to be followed. We'll follow the Mujtahid Imams. We'll follow their books. And if we have questions, we'll go get the answers. Simple. Not hard. It's not about your ego. It's about our hereafter. Is this clear? What what is the title of this book? Can anyone put the whole title that you remember? I want to show you something. Did anyone know the title, the entire complete title of this book? I told you several times. Who would put it up? The complete title of this book. This issue is the issue of laymen who don't know what they're doing. That's right. My issue with following one school over another versus another is the prejudice attitudes from one to another. That doesn't exist with people who know. All of them are valid to follow. Whether you follow the Hanafi school or Shafi school or Maliki school, or Hanbali, it's all valid. Just follow it correctly. That's it. There's no my school is better than your school. That's for unlearned people. Follow any of them correctly. That's it. That's the rule. Mm, right. Because what happens, we'll have more books in this week. So by Tuesday, inshallah, no later than Wednesday, we'll have more books in and I'll put it up when they come in. We're waiting for the books now. Uh, right. It is the most dangerous innovation threatening the sacred law. Because what happens when you don't have any kind of scholarship and qualified scholarship, you're going to destroy this religion. Eventually, you're going to destroy the sacred law, which those madhahib, those schools are put there to protect the sacred law. Mm. I was talking to an individual who thinks he doesn't have to follow a school, right? And he doesn't have any system whatsoever. Zero. Like, I'm like, okay, you wanna wipe away the schools to follow what? You? And you know you're not qualified. That's even more dangerous. But so I said, what when you have cases that there is not an explicit verse in the Quran? His answer, well, we're not responsible for that. We're excused. Really? So now, whatever you don't understand, we're excused. Come on, man. You can't be serious. But no, some people are serious. Leave the madhabs of those established scholars and all the great scholars who came after them and follow me. Despite the fact I'm nowhere near none of them, not even the least of them, right? The lowest level of the scholar within the madhab, I'm not even like him, but follow me. Now you see how you'll destroy the sacred law? I'm going to follow me. La ilaha illallah. If Islam had legal courts, we'd be executed. If there were legal courts, Islamic legal courts, many of us would be executed. SubhanAllah. For treason. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So, mashallah. Okay, we'll stop there. Any final questions? Is the matter clear? I hope this is clear for everyone and we're getting there, because this is stage one, recognizing we still ain't get to stage two to begin the learning process. This is clarifying the path. We still actually have to go do the work. We still have to learn al-fiqh. We have to still learn rules. We have to still learn all these matters. We ain't even get to that part yet. We're trying to get to the part of understanding that we have to learn, right? We haven't even begun to teach al-madhahib and, right? We have a lot of unlearning to do. And that's going to be the most painful process to correct the errors that we have so that we can learn properly. And trust me, I'm making no claims. I'm in the same boat as you. Don't think I'm saying something like I'm free of the same thing. No, we still got to work. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. You know, just keep doing it. Look at the day. If you see it this way, say you're broke, right? You don't have no money, but you get a new job or you start a new business. Even though you broke and struggling at the time, don't you see the day when your bills are all going to be paid and you're going to have some extra money. You look forward to that, right? But at the time you first get the job and or start the business, you're still struggling. We're at that beginning stage. But we should be looking forward. We're going to learn, and all it's going to be easy. Our children, grandchildren will actually have a sound, valid structure to practice the religion because we help do it. Look at it that way. It won't be so hard. Tell you. All right. May Allah reward you. Inshallah, for those who are able to make it, we'll see you in Philadelphia today at 11 o'clock. Uh, uh, at 1201 South 23rd. There's the address there. Let me write it. Might want to copy it. One 19145. Any Houston visits coming? Inshallah, we are working on it. We are working to go different places. After Ramadan, we'll start traveling again. Inshallah. Inshallah ta'ala. Listen, these matters that I'm talking about, trust me, there are many people who know what I'm talking about. They need to talk about it more. But I'm telling you, the politics and fitting in to survive has killed our Islamic scholarship. It's like many people who know what I'm talking about, but they have to compromise their principles because of their jobs, working in Islamic centers that are ran by boards who are la madhhabi and they paying the check, so you gotta tone it down. You know, this stuff. So it seems like something I'm saying is strange, but this is common knowledge for anyone who studies, right? It's not some advanced stuff, right? Uh, it's not. So make dua that our teachers are free from being confined by their jobs. Really, it's sad, but it's reality. You know, people know, they know the rules, but they're in places and they got to adjust. They don't have to, they choose to, but their livelihood is connected to it. So I have to adjust. I have to, and then some people just don't know. But I'm talking about people who know, learned people who actually studied, sat with ulama, sat with learned people and scholars. They know this stuff. It's not easy. 101, right? But this shows you the state of affairs we're in. That something that is common now seems like rocket science. May Allah help us, inshallah. Tonight, Sheikh Walid is traveling, so he will not be in. Inshallah, if Allah facilitates, I'll come on and do some review with you in his spot, if Allah facilitates. But his classes for today and tomorrow will be canceled because he's traveling. Let me answer this question. I have a question from viewing your earlier videos about Sahih Bukhari books printed. Is the info? Are you talking about English? If you're talking about the English books translation of Bukhari have some anthropomorphic translations that are not permissible to believe. So they have errors because they were printed by uh, people who follow a deviant path in learning, especially in tenets of faith. So they have in them translations that are not befitting to ascribe to Allah Ta'ala. But in general, the book is good, but they have those errors, so you have to recognize them. And that's it. In Arabic, there may be printing errors sometimes, but that's in any book. But in general, Sahih Bukhari books, Sahih Bukhari is Sahih Bukhari. Just, you know, keep learning and you'll recognize those things and just take them, fix them, and that's it. But overall, the book is okay. Just those areas. But if you don't know, that's like taking poison. Because it's only because you don't know. But as you learn, you'll see. So when you see ascribing Allah with hands and face, you know that's not the literal meaning, and that's a mistake, and you need to seek the real meaning for that. That's it. And I think what we're going to eventually do is start reading those books and pointing the stuff out for you and showing you what the scholar said as an aid. Or just, even if we don't read the whole thing, just go through it and pick out the bad areas, tell you what the scholar said so you can fix it in your books. Because that's what we have to do eventually anyway. What's the system called where our teachers are supported so they cannot be controlled by tyrannical rulers? Support. You can have a waqf system, which is an endowment, like they have in colleges, where you give certain money for teachers or schools so that they're independent. It's called a waqf. Mm. Tayyip, inshallah, we'll see y'all in Philadelphia. Jazakumullahu khaira. If not, we'll see you tonight. If not, we'll see you in the morning. But inshallah, we will see you. All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.